So today I'm going to make some peach preserves, and these are some beautiful peaches that were sent to me from a friend on Instagram who sent them from Georgia. So they're beautiful, ripe peaches. And when people talk about peaches today, a lot of times people are talking about this. That's not what we're talking about today. So you're going to need some beautiful, ripe peaches, about 12 of them, plus some pectin, some sugar, 2 lemons, and some jars, some little jelly jars. So these are 1 cup jars or half pints. What you're going to do is take a big pot of boiling water, wash the peaches thoroughly, and then once that pot of water is at a full rolling boil, you're going to drop the peaches into it. And you are going to wait until, just kind of like stir them around a little bit, make sure it comes back to full rolling boil. You're going to wait till you see some of the skin start to slip off like this. Then you're going to take that pot, drain the hot water out, and add ice so that it's cold water in there with them. And this is called blanching. So then you're going to slip the skins off. I know this sounds weird, but they should slide off kind of like a condom. I mean, really, so the skin just like slips off of a really ripe peach. And it's just smooth underneath. If the peaches are not quite ripe, and some of these are not exactly ripe, then I'm going to show you how to finish peeling them after being blanched with a little paring knife. So anyway, you're just going to kind of like feel around and see if any of them slip off easily, and just get those off quickly. And then so then if you still have some of the skins on, you're going to just kind of feel for the ones that you need to peel by hand, and you're going to take those out, transfer them to a plate or a bowl, and then peel them just by hand. If they slide off that way, you can kind of just pull and they'll come off. If that doesn't work for some of them, then you can get a small paring knife and just take the knife and put it right up under the skin and just pull back, kind of like you're peeling a mango or something like that. And that will work. You're just going to finish peeling the peaches. Again, if the peaches are really ripe, the skins will just slide off quickly, and you can just kind of grab the skin and just with one pull, it'll just slip off. And some of them will even slip off in the water themselves. You can see that even on the more ripe side of the peach, the skins are peeling off easier, like on the orange side of the peach, whereas the side that hasn't seen the sun, the skin sticks a little bit more. So just keep peeling all those peaches, and the ones that come off cleanly, you can see are really smooth on the peach underneath. The ones that are not as ripe, that come off, with the knife, they leave kind of a textured surface to the peach. But you're going to just kind of like gather up all of your skins, and you're going to be throwing those away. They don't have any purpose left, because in the process of blanching, they're going to actually be just, like they don't have any flavor or anything left because they've been in the boiling water. So just kind of throw those skins away, and then you're going to collect all of your peeled peaches, and we are going to take a knife and cut the peach in half and remove the seeds. Now, one little side note, I'm just finishing the peeling process here. One little side note is that when you're removing the seeds, you want to make sure to get the whole pit, including that little teeny piece at the end, because you really don't want to bite into any pit when you're eating peach preserves. So you want to kind of slice the peach in half like this, open it up, and that seed should just pop out of a ripe peach. Some of the ones that are not quite as ripe, I had to take out just, with the knife, the seeds. So you're just going to chop these up. I actually didn't use a cutting board because my cupboards can stand up to cutting, and there's so much peach mess. I don't have a big enough cutting board, but if you have one of those really big cutting boards with the little sides around it for the little draining sides or whatever, then that would probably be preferable to just cutting it on your cupboard, but I've sanitized my cupboard, so this is fine. You're just going to chop it into like 1/2 inch pieces, smallish pieces, and then you're going to put all that back into that same pot that you blanched the peaches in. And we're going to get ready to add the sugar and the lemon juice, and then start cooking our peach preserves. So you just have to, of course, clean up from that sticky peach juice that's going to be on your cupboard, but that's part of the process in making anything with peaches, is they are messy, but that's the beauty of it too, because the stickiness means they're sweet. So I'm just juicing 2 lemons, and I'm going to pour the juice of those 2 lemons into those cut up peaches. And again, I used 12 peaches that I blanched and skinned and pitted and then chopped. And then I'm going to use 2 lemons, and this is just a really nice little juicer. I actually got it at a yard sale. It's I've had it for years and years, and it just is really my favorite lemon juicer, and it's easy to clean up. So dump that lemon juice in on top of the peaches. Then this is kind of the scary part, because you're going to add most of a bag of sugar. I don't know, it might be like 6.5 cups or something like that. I didn't measure it, but you're just going to kind of dump it in. So this is like an 8-cup bag of sugar, and you're going to dump in all but about a couple inches of the bag. And that sounds like a lot of sugar, but for 12 peaches and 2 lemons and the pectin, these are preserves after all. So sugar does the preserving as well as the acid from the lemons, the lemon juice. Then you're going to stir up the sugar, the lemon juice, and the peaches, chopped peaches, and you're going to bring that to a boil. While you're doing that, you want to sterilize your jars just one step further by putting them in the oven. You want to get them nice and hot on 250 degrees, and put some of those lids face up in the bottom of a pan of about 1 inch of water, just to kind of start to heat while you're cooking your preserves. So you're going to cook them, and they're going to start to bubble. When they start to bubble, I usually add a spoonful of butter just to keep the foaming down, so you don't have to skim off foam when you're pouring them into the jars. So just add like a little spoonful of butter, stir that in, keep boiling it, bring your lids to a little rolling boil. Make sure that you set out your rings and a pot holder, and then just keep stirring your peach preserves. Bring them to a full rolling boil, which is defined as a boil that does not go away when you stir it. And then you're going to dump in the pectin, the whole, just 1 packet of original Sure-Gel pectin, and dump that in, stir that around till it's incorporated. And then you're going to see the juice kind of become a little bit more clear after that pectin is added. And you want to bring this to what's considered passing the jelly test, which is when those drips become a lot slower, and then 2 drips eventually kind of like come together and drip off. And that means that it's past the jelly test, which means that your preserves will set up. So keep stirring it and keep testing it until you reach that point. Some people prefer to use a wooden spoon, some people prefer to use a metal spoon. Ultimately, you can also drop a little drip of it in a kind of like glass of ice water, and it's supposed to, I don't know, look soft, like a little soft piece of jelly in there. But I like to just kind of like watch the drips, and you can see that those 2 drips kind of came together. They're getting slower, and you can just kind of like eyeball when it's going to thicken, when it's thickened enough to set up for preserves. Preserves are easy to spread, but you still want them to be thick. You don't want it to be a syrup that you pour like for pancakes. If you want to do pancake syrup, then don't worry about this step. Just go ahead and send it straight to the jars. But if you want the jelly consistency, that thicker consistency for preserves, then do that. Once your jelly test has been passed, you're going to get a hot jar out of the oven. Again, those jars are at 250 degrees in the oven. You're going to see that those jars are hot once the preserves go in the jar, and I use a funnel so that it doesn't ladle all over the cupboard or get preserves down the side of the jar. You're going to see that they kind of almost boil inside the jar a little bit. So everything is hot. It has to be super hot if you're going to open kettle can, which is what this is called when you're using just the oven and hot jars, hot lids, hot preserves. So here I'm grabbing my lids, and I have some calluses on my fingers, so I can do this. You might want to use a washcloth or something else. But basically I'm just feeling, I dip my finger in the hot water to sanitize it and then feel around the lid, make sure that the ring of the jar is completely cleaned off before I put that lid on. So there's not any little bit of jam or anything up there to get in between the lid and the jar. Then I screw the ring on really tight, and I flip it upside down because that's going to make sure that that lid gets even hotter for just 5 minutes or so while I do a few more jars. So I'm going to repeat the process. Hot jar out of the oven, funnel inside the jar, ladle the hot preserves into the jar until it's close to the top. You don't want it all the way to the top because you don't want the preserves to touch the lid. However, you do want it close to the top because you don't want too much airspace. Because if you have too much airspace, then that is going to kind of like not keep the preserves as well preserved. It's not going to keep that seal locked in. So again, you're going to just dip your finger in the boiling water, or you can use a cloth if your fingers aren't as tough as mine, and just wipe off the top of the jar, make sure it's free of any stickiness, and then put that lid on, screw the ring on, and flip the jar upside down, and repeat with the next one. And you can see that I don't wear aprons. I know that a lot of people do, and it's probably a great idea. I only have one that's for Christmas. Like when I bake at Christmas, I wear it because it kind of looks like Christmas. So anyways, I just wear old t-shirts, usually t-shirts that Franklin doesn't wear anymore, and that's kind of what I cook in. So again, you're going to fill it just within maybe 1/4 of an inch or so of the top, wipe off the top of any stickiness with that hot water, so it's sanitized. You want to keep everything super sanitized because you don't want any bacteria anywhere in a jar that's going to seal and be just sitting in your pantry, because these are preserved, like actually preserved. They're not just to put in the fridge. They can sit on the shelf with no refrigeration for as long as they stay sealed. So you're just going to continue this process until all of your jars are full. So again, you're going to just keep filling those jars until you get them all full. The tricks to canning are everything needs to be hot, like really hot, sterilized hot while you're doing it. And you also have to use the right level of acidity with the lemons or citric acid or some type of acidity. And also the sugar helps preserve things. So heat and sugar and acid are all working together in the canning process. And you can put these in a hot water bath, which is basically just a open kettle canning, where even if you just have a big pot like the one that I used to actually make these preserves, if you had another one that same size, you could actually boil water in it. If you have a wire canner holder to put the jars in, or sometimes you can even put just rings, like for the lids, just the rings at the bottom of the pan or the pot, and then put the jars on top of those rings just to separate them from the actual direct heat, and then fill the water up over the top of the jars once you put these lids and rings on. and then boil it for like 10 minutes to get everything hot and then take them out. That's, you know, like that's a sure way of doing it. But honestly, if you can keep everything super hot with this process, you really don't need a canner. You can just can using the heat of your oven to keep those jars hot. And then this kind of process of flipping them upside down, using the hot lids, hot jars, and hot preserves. So it's just a process that I did all throughout my childhood. I've canned from an open kettle canning, I've canned using the oven, I've canned using a pressure cooker, and all the methods work as long as you kind of know what you're generally doing. You don't want to mess up canning and get somebody sick by not getting your lid sealed, or not following the process correctly, or not using the right amount of acidity or sugar. So these are the preserves all finished, and you can hear the jars seal as they cool down, and the lids just kind of pop to seal. So I'm going to butter some toast, and this is still hot. The preserves are still warm, so they're going to be a little bit thicker once they cool all the way. But I like to eat at least one piece of toast that's buttered with just fresh, warm peach preserves the day that I make it, just because it's so good. And in fact, it's kind of sad that I don't have homemade bread right now. This is just a piece of potato bread, but you can, if you really want to spoil yourself, make my homemade yeast rolls and get one of those out of the oven and butter it, and get your jar of preserves out of your fridge or out of your pantry and put some peach preserves on a buttered homemade yeast roll. So this is super good. It's late at night and I'm finishing this up, but you cannot just take one bite. It's so good. It's like candy. And you can even just eat it on ice cream or anything. These are so good. So once you're done and the jars have cooled off, like to the touch, what I like to do is label any that I'm going to either give as gifts or send off to somebody. And then also you want to check the seals to make sure that they are all sealed, which all of those are. How it's going to sound if it's not sealed is like that versus that. Now, if that's too hard for you to figure out, also if it's not sealed, the lid will do this. Whereas these, if you press down on them, nothing happens. They are sucked down by the heat. So that's an unsealed lid. There's nothing in that jar. But yeah, so make sure your seals are good, and then you can go ahead and put them in the pantry, and they should last 1 to 2 years. I mean, really, they're never going to go bad as long as those seals remain intact. So happy canning, and let me know if you have any questions about this process. I'm always checking my comments every day or every couple days to try and answer any questions you have.